doing it here too. Welcome everybody live here. First, I want to acknowledge eyeball to eyeball to everybody who's here in the service in person, and then I'll turn. I don't know if you can tell the shift in eyes, but welcome. I'm looking at you. I just don't know that you know that. Welcome to everybody on Zoom. I guess I have to look at the camera, so I can't see you when I do this. Maybe in another 4 or 5 years, I'll get used to how to do all of this, but it's just so awkward for me. So welcome Zoom online and welcome live in person. You all, when I look at you, I know I'm looking at you. So this works really good live. I just still can't get this Zoom thing down. It can take me about 5 or 6, and then I'll be too old to remember what I learned. So it's probably hopeless for us. I have the strangest inspiration today by way of the music, or the song, I should say, that inspired our message today. The title of the song works really well. Candace may or may not be aware, I've been whistling this song probably all day. But I had a conversation with my neighbor last night, and Candace had no idea where I went. I was talking to my daughter, Aubrey, on the telephone. I strolled outside. I often go outside to talk on the phone. I'm not sure why I do this, but I do, I think, to stay away from Candace. The better sports fan in our family is definitely Candace. And so usually there's football going on Saturdays, and so I go outside to talk on the phone to give her so not to disturb her. And I walked outside, and my neighbor came strolling over. Doug, how are you? And I said, Aubrey, gotta run. So in this conversation, with my neighbor, we just started wandering in conversation, and he just made a comment about the anger that's out there right now. He said, and he's my age, and so the two old guys sitting across, almost like Tim Time or whatever his name, Tool Time Tim, sitting and talking over the fence. We're talking across our 2 yards, and he was saying, the anger level is just amazing. He said, everywhere I go, I'm confronted with people who seem so angry. He said, we just don't seem to do anything in the name of love anymore. And when he said that, forgive me for where my mind always goes, I shifted to U2, and I went to the band, the music band U2, and there's a song called In the Name of Love. And the reason I say it's ironic is the title, In the Name of Love, is beautiful. The actual title of the song is Pride. And it's Pride, and then in brackets it says In the Name of Love. And if you listen to the song, it's an indictment on the fact that not much is done in the name of love. I'm not sending you off to listen to this song, but it's first an indictment on politics, and second, it's an indictment on the anger and the level of what was going on probably 20 years ago. But it mentions, maybe some don't know, but it mentions Martin Luther King's assassination in it. A man in Memphis, and it goes on to talk about this shooting. So it's saying the same thing my neighbor Mike was saying last night. Is anything done in the name of love any longer? So our theme today is In the Name of Love. Okay, and anyone who has heard me speak, especially over the last year and a half, is not shocked by the title. I'm certain of that. But what I'm trying to help with is to get us to hear this message, whether it was 6 weeks ago, whether it was today, whether it was 2 years ago, to embrace this enough to have the courage to follow through. Not to nod in agreement, though I hope you would, not to nod in agreement on a Sunday morning, but to nod in agreement on a Tuesday afternoon, or on a Thursday morning when the test is right in front of you and you're confronted with someone who's difficult to love, who's difficult to send out that kind of love for. It's really, truly a message about following through, a message about responsibility. I listened to an interview recently with Tracy Morgan, who was hit by a Walmart truck. And he started to talk about this horrible accident that he was in. And he said, if it wasn't, and he's a very funny man, so you have to understand that everything is tongue in cheek and everything's done with purpose of being funny. And he said, if it wasn't Walmart, I wouldn't be taken care of so well. And his point was, this man who was driving, using my theme today, was driving in the name of Walmart. So when he crashed into Tracy Morgan, he didn't crash in just as a driver. He crashed into him in the name of Walmart. So Walmart had to write the check to help Tracy Morgan. There's a responsibility to who you wear and who you represent. So let me introduce you to the thought that those of you who have made a commitment to Jesus Christ wear that uniform. Those who have given themselves to Jesus Christ represent Jesus Christ in all that you do. So when you proverbially or figuratively crash into someone, verbally, emotionally, mentally, in some type of confrontation, you're not just representing yourself. You're doing it in the name of Jesus Christ. So I want you to hear this message in that sense. Anyone who has joined any of our Tuesday nights, I think would understand this. There's a base lesson that I want to teach you on Tuesday nights in our classes, but there's a bigger message. I usually have a different twist because I know I think differently than most. So there's a different twist on the angle of which I come to you. All of it to test you, maybe to try you, to challenge you, to embrace what we're talking about. Not just hear it, nod your head, or disagree either way, but instead to say, how does this fit me? How can I make my life fit into this message? If it truly is inspired of God, is God asking me to change my behavior? Is he asking me to make some type of adjustment to the way I'm carrying myself? And I say this next part, and I know I've said it before, but I say this next part so that you're not overwhelmed by anything you might hear. Sometimes it's just a little change. I don't want anyone to ever leave a message and say, whew, I can never do any of the things he just talked about because it's just too much of a change. It's not what I'm saying. Sometimes it's just a one-off conversation. Maybe it's your mom who rubs you wrong. Maybe it's your children who rub you wrong. Maybe it's someone at your workplace, wherever it is. Keep it small. Keep your task list small. Don't say I have to change everything, but maybe there's someone that it's not connecting with. How can I change my ways in that interaction? If you get that one fixed, well, then we'll talk about the next interaction. Don't make it so big that you don't do anything, that you're paralyzed with too much of a workload that you leave and say, whew, I'm out of here. I can't do any of the above. So don't make it bigger than it is. In the name of love. And the furthering of this message has nothing to do with Bono or U2. It has everything to do with Jesus Christ. That everything you do is in the name of love. 1 John says God is love. So everything in the name of God. If God is the source of love, then everything you do, hear this now, everything you do in the name of love. Arguing with your wife, arguing with your loved ones, arguing with your children, step back, readjust, and take it forward in the name of love. Having a problem with your boss or someone in your workspace, step back. Everything you do, even your thoughts, in the name of love. I'm going to go to Genesis 29. And then I'm going to read you a few verses. As always, I'm empowered with, or I bring to the table way too many verses. And I could sit here and rattle off. I was so taken by Brother Tom DeRazio's approach. He took the same amount of verses I usually have in kind of my arsenal, and he put them up on a screen. And if you were on that particular Sunday, boom, boom, they just appeared, bam, bam, bam. And then he did read through them, but he already had captured our attention. It was just a lovely presentation, and one I didn't want to mimic today because I'd just be copying him. And those of you who were on that week would say, he's just doing what the other guy did. So I didn't want to do it that way, but I loved his approach. It was wonderful. Plus the visual was very, very strengthening. So having said that, we're going to go to Genesis 29 to start with a little story. And it's a love story, surprise. And it's a story about a man named Jacob, who we have heard about, those of you on Tuesday nights especially, we've heard about week after week after week. Jacob is the one who had the WWE wrestling match with an angel, and his prize when he wrestled with his angel all night seemed to be less than worthy of the wrestling match, but it was a name change. That was his reward. So imagine, Lonnie, that you wrestle for 6 hours all night long, and they say, you're no longer Lonnie, you're Bob. Now go and be well. What? I did all this wrestling to get a name like Bob? What just happened? So Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Now, the reason that was so powerful is you hear Israel all the time, right? Country, religion, people, it represents so much. The guy was Jacob. And he wrestled an angel and was given this name, Israel. And so when you hear the house of Israel, they're talking about the house of Jacob. Okay? So when he was not Israel yet and still Jacob, he stumbled upon a well. And there at this well, this watering well, he falls in love, in lust, probably, just eyes at this point because he doesn't know her, fell in love / lust with this beautiful woman, Rachel. And he's captured by her. And in such a way that he's willing to do anything. Now, as it turns out, Old Testament is always a little bit twisty, and you have to maneuver through it and maneuver through what we know or feel is right today with what was then, because as it turns out, she was blood relative, and it seems kind of odd. Fortunately, I'm speaking to a congregation in Kentucky, and they're all saying, oh, I don't find the oddity in this at all. Just keep going with your sermon. I'm with you. So having said that, he's dealing with a blood relative in this case. And his uncle's daughter makes her a cousin of some sort. Actually, I think it's on his mother's side, but it is related. So in this case, the uncle is Laban, the daughter is Rachel. He falls in love with her. She has a sister, Leah, who is older. And as was the tradition in these days, in order to get to Rachel, you have to take my other daughter first. And that's what happens. Right? So again, work through the Old Testament stuff because it really doesn't fly today, but it did then. So he has to first take Leah, who he doesn't love. And I'm sure he learns to love her in a very deep way, but he's in love with Rachel. So how does he get to Rachel if he has to take this other one? So I'm going to read you just a few verses. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And if you're going to go to Genesis, the 29th chapter, this is 16 and 20, though I've just given you a recount on the entire chapter. Leah was tender-eyed, and Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. So Leah was this sweetheart. He didn't get a bad deal. I want you to understand that. He didn't get a bad deal with Leah, but that's not who he favored. That's not the one he was in love with. I came back from a camp out. Candace, if you had your shock collar, this is your cue to shock me on the shock collar to silence me. But I'm going to finish my sentence. I went to a camp out in 1977 and saw this young lady, this young girl, 15 years old. Saw this young lady, I think I was 17 or 18. She was 15. And I went back to my home base in West Palm Beach, and I began to talk about the girl with the eyes. That's everyone in my hometown knew that I had fallen for the girl with the eyes. Join me 45 years later, and I got the girl with the eyes. Now, I didn't have to work as hard as this story goes, But I hung in there for 4 years of dating and engagement, 1,300 miles apart. So on some level, I'm not as good as Jacob, but I did a little bit of work to get the girl with the eyes. So I believe that Jacob is in love with the girl with the eyes. Okay, he sees Leah, she's a sweetheart, she's probably tender, but that's not who his heart went to. So let's go on. Rachel was beautiful and well favored. Jacob loved Rachel and said to Laban, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, the younger daughter. Laban said, it's better that I give her to you. He says to thee, but I'm going to read it in your language. It's better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. Stay here on my land. Work as my servant. He's going to work for 7 years for the other sister. I would just tell you the name of our theme today, or the theme of our message today is in the name of love. Jacob worked in the name of love for 7 years. I asked you earlier about that you would follow through if the message connected with you. This man followed through 7 years without fulfillment. In fact, married to the other one. Understand this story. It's fabulous. The story's fabulous. It's better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. Because of the depth of love he had, it was just a few days in his mind. 7 years. Okay, here's what I want you to do right now. Do your math. Do whatever your age is, and I'm not going to pull anyone's IDs here. You're going to have to do this on your own. Go back 7 years. Right now, go back in time 7 years. Figure out where you were. Real quick. I don't know where you were. I want you to do that. I want you to do this silly exercise so I can get a drink of water. I don't know where you are right now in your mind, but I hope you did this, at least humored me with this, because wherever you just got to, for Lonnie, it was a school, right? Somewhere you're at a school, maybe you're coaching, maybe you're not, I don't know where you are. For each of you, for Nick, I don't know where you are 7 years ago. Don't know if you're at Ford yet. Maybe you are, I don't know. But wherever you are 7 years ago is when you started. Wherever you are in your mind 7 years ago, Candace, wherever you are, I think we're a year in with our grandsons, right? Okay, that's where you are. That's the point you started working. And today's the day you married Rachel. Whatever that time span is, wherever you were, is how long he worked. I want you to feel what 7 years feels like so you understand what this man did. And he did it in the name of love. Right? Jesus Christ came to this earth in the name of love. For the Father so loved the world. Those that you struggle with, those that you have conflict with, those that you disagree with, fall into the category of those that God loves. Understand what I'm saying to you. You may find a problem with someone. They may not be a believer and you are, but he sent his son for those as well. For God so loved every single person on this earth that he sent his only begotten son. I want you to embrace that. My problem in all of my conflicts, which include with Candace, my problem with all of my conflicts is I feel right all the time. And for some reason, whoever I'm in conflict with doesn't see my way. And my job from that point on is to educate them, to get them to my level of depth of understanding. That's what an argument is. Never have Candace and I argued and I've said, I just want to see things your way. Never has that happened. But I guarantee you, I flipped those pronouns. And someone needs to see someone else's way of thinking in an argument. That's what an argument is. For God so loved Candace that he sent his only begotten son. In that moment, I have to remember, in that argument of wanting to win, I have to remember there's a greater win here than this argument. The greater win is the win for the Lord. Am I representing Jesus Christ in that moment? Am I doing anything in this argument in the name of love? Self-love, all over the place. Pure love, probably not a bit. And when that overwhelms me and my heart changes and my attitude changes and my approach changes, now I'm getting it in the name of love. Now, the irony I told you about the song was it's called Pride, and then in brackets, in the name of love. And I represent both of those in that argument. The first part of that argument, I'm filled with pride. The second part of that argument, if I turn and if I find my way to the better choice, I'm now doing it in the name of love. I'm telling you today that each of us represents something greater than our own cause. We represent a greater calling than just ourselves in everything we do. And if you'll embrace this message as your charge on how to carry yourself, how to walk, how to interact, how to be among others, that your calling is to do everything in the name of love, I promise you this, your life will change. When I stood at the water as a young 18-year-old who didn't understand what I was committing to, and the brother grabbed my two hands, much as I grabbed yours, Nick. I'm only imitating Tony Britz from 1976. When I grab someone's hands at the water and I ask them a couple questions, I'm just doing what a brother did for me in 1976. Truly, that's what I'm doing. As I grabbed your hands and I said, do you repent of your sins? And you said, yes. I thought, we're halfway there. And then I said, do you promise to serve the Lord all the days of your life? And you respond, yes. What you're saying is, I promise in this moment that everything I do from this point forward will be in the name of love. And I'm here to say, as an 18-year-old, I did not lie at the water. My intent was pure. My desire was pure. My follow-through was intended to be pure, but I have not lived up to that promise every waking moment at all. I've forgotten in the name of love. And I've confused a love for myself with a love that's so much greater. I want you to think about what surrounds you today. I want you to think about what you feel when you see so much conflict. And I want to ask you, is it love that you're receiving or that you're sending back? I think of those who have trained us in love. And usually it's parents. Maybe it takes a village, maybe it's a family for you, I don't know. For me, it was parents. We lived in South Florida. My mom and dad's family were all in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania. No one in our peripheral was family. So there was no community. There was no village to raise us. It was my parents. So I learned love firsthand from my parents, whether well-trained or not. They were responsible for teaching me kind of the tenets of love. And there was a lacking in it. And I probably carried, and they were wonderful human beings, both of them, extraordinary people. From a 63-year-old perspective, I now see how much they tried. From a 63-year-old perspective, I now validate what the 17-year-old felt. They failed also. I now see it, but I no longer have the pains that were associated when I was 17 and feeling their failures and trying to teach love. But now I understand what they were doing. Given their lack of understanding, given their lack of skills in some areas, I now get it. But that doesn't mean I'm not scarred from that experience. So when I hear a message that says, in the name of love, I have to factor through my definition of what love is. And I'm telling you, please don't anyone take this wrong, but I don't think any of us have the right definition of what Jesus Christ meant when he asked us to love one another. I don't think we really understand when he asked us to love God, what that means. Love God, love others. Do we really understand what that love means? I've told you my tutors didn't understand love well enough to teach me. So it's been my quest to figure out what Jesus Christ really meant. So that even as you hear this message today, in the name of love, you're filtering through your own understanding of what love is. And I'm just telling you, without meaning to offend anyone, you're not there yet. Whatever it is you're interpreting of what I'm saying in the name of love, it's higher than that. And wherever you're thinking, you're probably thinking, even that's tough. But he has higher expectation. And could you imagine if we loved, every single person loved as he intended, what this world would be like? That's his intention. But I think there's something beautiful that we don't love that way out there. Okay, and here's what it is. If we who love the Lord truly have a desire to find out what he meant when he said to love that way, and we expressed ourselves through that love, others would hear it. Others would see it. Others would feel it. Others would know it and be drawn to that love. And ultimately be drawn to Jesus Christ, watch this, through you. That's what he wants. Now, I have verse after verse after verse. I'm not going to do any of them. I'm not going to do any of these verses. If you just go to the word and search just your concordance, just Google love, you'll find verse after verse after verse. Those who know me know that I'm going to get to do the two. Somewhere in this sermon, I'm going to talk about do the two, love God, love others. So I've told you that. I've told you that that's what God wants from you. I told my neighbor last night that. So Mike and I were talking. I said, Mike, for a long time, I've been convicted that there's a couple verses that if we would all embrace it, there is zero room for sin. And he said, oh, tell me those verses. I said, hear me, zero chance for you to sin if we truly subscribed and committed and submitted to these verses. Said when Jesus Christ was given the option to choose between all the laws to pick the greatest, and I stopped. I said, Mike, everyone thinks it's 10. When he was given the choice to pick from the laws, everyone thinks it's a 10, or they said commandments. I said, everyone thinks it's 10 commandments. It's not. I think it's 612 mitzvos. M-I-T-Z-V-O. Mitzvah was the Hebrew word for the laws and commandments given. He had 602 or 612, I can't remember the exact number, to choose from. And they asked for one. Just give us one commandment that's the greatest. And he said, there's none like this one. Love God. Love God. And like Jesus always did, he expounded. He didn't allow it to lay with just one. Because if we would do the one, we'd do the two. But he wanted to express so that we understood what goes hand in hand with that. He said, and there's another that's like unto it. Love one another as you love yourself. What you expect, what you need, what you desire from others, give that to them. Teach them love by the way you love them. They want the same thing you want. Give them that love. If we would love God and love others as he intends, zero, no room for sin. We are not a sinless society, so we must not be loving God as we should. We are not a sinless society, so we must not be loving one another as we should. And I implore you today that everything you do in the name of love. Nothing else expresses the Lord's message better than loving one another. So I'm asking you today, discount the song that's sung by Bono, discount the words of that song, but embrace the title of that song, in the name of love, that you might do everything. And just start one thing at a time. Don't make my challenge so great that you do nothing. Just start with one. Are you having problems in your relationship? Take it to this level in the name of love. Are you having problems at work? Take it to this level in the name of love. Are you having problems within for yourself? Love yourself. Love others as yourself, it says. Love yourself. If the Lord sees something good in you, Nick Yepko, I call you to be mine. Nick, who are you not to love yourself as he loved you? How dare we not love ourselves? Sister Patty, he called you. How dare you not honor his calling in you? Love yourself. Love yourself enough to honor yourself by loving others. And then what you get back. Candace and I knew someone we just adored. And this person used to always say, there's no love out there. And we understood the reason why is this person didn't know how to express their love. So it wasn't coming back. So when you do things in the name of love, it's going to come back to you. End with this. Good acquaintance of mine in the church, member of the church, was in a communion service. And the message before that had been the love of God. And this individual said it came from someone that had never heard that individual speak on the love of God. So it was kind of odd. So it got to communion, and as this person was an eyewitness to the passing of that communion, as it went from person to person, this individual focused on each person that communion came to. Okay. And as it would go from as the minister would stop in front of that individual, the Lord would enlighten this individual to some interaction with that particular person when they felt love together. Okay, following me? And this individual began to fall in love with the people of God. And the confession of this individual before that communion service is, I had all kinds of problems with each of those people in that meeting. I had all kinds of conflict. I had situations where I could not look past this particular Wednesday with this interaction with this person. I couldn't get to where I had pure love for them again. And God was enlightening this individual in that moment, the loving relationship that they had experienced, maybe not had, but had experienced. And by the end of the meeting, by the end of that service, part of that service, overwhelmed, weeping for love for others. This is God's desire in your heart, that you would love, that you would enjoy the love of God, that you would express the love of God, that you would experience the love of God. Or in other words, that all that you did, all that you received was in the name of love. May the Lord bless each one of you. May you feel that and experience that in your life is my prayer, sincere prayer for each of you. May the Lord bless you.